So don't worry, we're gonna get this Mark Levin audio started really quickly here. I just want to set this up so I can actually say that this is a commentary video. So ultimately, the context is the left being upset about Trump and Russia, right? They say, oh, you know, Flynn and Sessions had these meetings with Russia, and, you know, I'm over here like, okay, so what? They're meetings with Russia, people meet with Russia. And then the left says, oh, but they lied about the meetings, right? They said they didn't happen, it turns out they did. And then I'm over here like, well, you know, we don't exactly know what, you know, like we know that they were wrong. They said things that were wrong about the meetings, but that doesn't mean that they lied, right? Those are two different things. So you can be wrong and you can lie, right? They're not exactly the same thing. So here we're talking about Comey, James Comey, who's the former director of the FBI, who was investigating Michael Flynn, who was fired in the beginning of the month, and then shortly after he was fired, it was revealed that he had a memo, okay, in which he recalled that Donald Trump, as president, had asked him to end the Flynn investigation. Specifically, with something like Trump said, "Oh, you know, Flynn's a good guy. Hopefully, you can like see your way past this." It was something like that, right? According to this Comey memo, although really we only know the Comey memo because someone read parts of it to a reporter from the New York Times, right? The reporter from the New York Times does not have the memo. No one's seen the memo. Part of it was read to the reporter. Now, Mark Levin has always been interested in discovering where did we get this information from, right? So, you know, we know about these meetings between Flynn and Sessions and the Russians, and Levin says, well, where did we get this information from? And of course, his answer is that we learned of it from Obama holdovers in, you know, in government, right? That are leaking classified information. There's a whole bunch of information about that. I'll upload other videos about that. And so in this case, the leak appears to be from Comey. And so what Mark Levin wants is for people to ask questions along those lines. Now, by the way, in the link in the description for the video, I've included a link to from ABC 10 questions Jim Comey should be asked. So you can compare Mark Levin's questions to ABC's questions. I'll probably do that after the testimony goes down. So, you know, here we are. Mark Levin, questions he'd ask Jim Comey. Thank you.
Should Mr. Comey appear before one of these committees, and if I were a congressman or a senator, here's how I would question him. Mr. Comey, you say you kept memoranda and notes. Is that correct? Did you keep notes on your conversations with President Obama? Where are those notes now, Mr. Comey? Did you keep notes on your conversations with Attorney General Eric Holder? Where are those notes now, Mr. Comey? Did you keep notes on your conversations with Attorney General Loretta Lynch? Where are those notes now, Mr. Comey? Did you keep notes on any of your conversations or meetings with any members of Congress, Mr. Comey? Where are those notes now, Mr. Comey? Did you keep any notes on any conversations you had with reporters or journalists, Mr. Comey? Where are those notes now? Did you tamper with, alter, or destroy any of your notes, Mr. Comey, at any time? With whom did you share these notes, if anybody, Mr. Comey? Where are the original copies of these notes, Mr. Comey? Are they in your possession or the FBI's possession? Did you make copies of these notes? Are they in your personal possession? Tell me, Mr. Comey, do any of your notes contain classified or investigative information? Do you understand, Mr. Comey, that if they contain classified or investigative information, if you shared them with anybody, that's a felony? Do you also understand that if there's any evidence in your notes of your stating or implying obstruction of justice, and you failed to report that to the Attorney General of the United States, that you've committed a felony? Tell me, Mr. Comey, who else has seen your notes? Any reporters? Any colleagues? Any politicians? And I want to remind you, you're under oath. You see, ladies and gentlemen, we're told Mr. Comey wrote a lot of notes about a lot of conversations. And to me, the scandal is what's in these notes. Let me continue. Mr. Comey, you took contemporaneous notes after your discussion, which was leaked to the New York Times with the President of the United States, about Michael Flynn. The suggestion here is the spin that Mr. Trump was trying to get you to stop investigating Mr. Flynn. Is that correct? Tell me, Mr. Comey, with whom did you share those notes? Since you're the only one in possession of them, or the FBI, presumably you or somebody at the FBI shared them with somebody. Did you share them with somebody? Okay, what are their names? Did you know they were going to leak it? Now tell me, Mr. Comey, if this is obstruction of justice, as many surrogates have said anonymously and many people in the media have said, why didn't you do anything about it, Mr. Comey? Why didn't you tell members of Congress? Why didn't you say so in front of one of these open hearings? Why didn't you resign? Instead, you sat on it, which is a potential felony. Can you explain yourself, please? Tell me, Mr. Comey, if you thought it was improper for the President to meet with you one-on-one, then why did you meet with him one-on-one? If you thought it was improper to take the President's call or to make a call to a President one-on-one, then why were you involved in such conversations? Can you explain that to us, Mr. Comey? Tell me, Mr. Comey, were you at any time in communication with the Hillary Clinton campaign? Did you retain emails, text messages, hard documents of any of those communications? Tell me, Mr. Comey, did you write any contemporaneous notes after those conversations or meetings? Just curious, Mr. Comey. Tell me, Mr. Comey, since you left the FBI, that is, since you were fired, have you had communications with Senator Chuck Schumer? What were the nature of those communications? Did you keep any notes? Tell me, Mr. Comey, since you left the FBI, did you have any communications with Barack Obama, Loretta Lynch, or Eric Holder? Tell me, Mr. Comey, since you left the FBI, have you directed any of your associates, friends, former colleagues to make any contacts to the media? Tell me, Mr. Comey, these memoranda and these notes that you took, can you walk us through the custody of these materials? In other words, where are the originals? Where are the copies? Did you ever take any home? Did you ever make multiple copies? Can you tell us about how you treated these memoranda, sir, and these notes? These are the questions I would ask, ladies and gentlemen. These are the questions I would ask. Because you see, folks, I think Comey's conduct is detestable. I think he was rogue. I think he was out of control. And I don't think he kept notes just to refresh his memory and recollect discussions that he had. I think he kept notes for legal purposes. I think he kept notes to potentially threaten people. So it will be very, very important to know the full extent to which Mr. Comey took notes, on whom he took notes, what he did with the notes, if he violated the law in terms of making copies of the notes, if they had classified or investigative information, who he shared them with, the custody of the notes, whether original or copies, whether he altered any of the notes, destroyed any notes, whether he failed to go to his superiors if he thought there was actual obstruction, and so forth and so on. I think it's a big deal. That's what I would ask of Mr. Comey. Now, there have been several sources, but one in particular, gotnews.com, and they point out that former FBI Director James Comey testified under Senate oath May 3rd that the Trump administration had not pressured his agency to halt any investigation for political purposes. Let's take a listen to this clip. Go ahead.
If the Attorney General or senior officials at the Department of Justice opposes a specific investigation, can they halt that FBI investigation?
In theory, yes.
Has it happened?
Not in my experience, because it would be a big deal to tell the FBI to stop doing something that without an appropriate purpose. I mean, oftentimes they give us opinions that we don't see a case there, and so you ought to stop investing resources in it. But I'm talking about a situation where we were told to stop something for a political reason. That would be a very big deal. It's not happened in my experience.
Let's play this again because there's been some parsing out there, and I want to really underscore what he just said. Go ahead.
If the Attorney General or senior officials at the Department of Justice opposes a specific investigation...
Stop right there. So some people are saying her question, this is the senator from Hawaii, is focused on Department of Justice officials. Department of Justice officials trying to interfere with an FBI investigation, trying to call him off. Go ahead.
Opposes a specific investigation, can they halt that FBI investigation?
In theory, yes.
Has it happened?
Not in my experience, because it would be a big deal to tell the FBI to stop doing something that without an appropriate purpose.
Stop. So you see, you're saying it would be a big deal to tell the FBI not to do something without an appropriate purpose. That's not limited to the Attorney General or the Deputy Attorney General or anybody else. It would be a big deal to tell the FBI not to investigate somebody. Right? It'd be a big deal, he said. And this testimony is on May 3rd. Well after he met with Donald Trump. Go ahead.
I mean, oftentimes they give us opinions that we don't see a case there, and so you ought to stop investing resources in it. But I'm talking about a situation where we were told to stop something for a political reason. That would be a very big deal. It's not happened in my experience.
Well, he can try and parse that all he wants, and so can other people. But it seems to me absurd to try and parse that. What he's basically saying is anybody tries to interfere with an FBI investigation and call it off, Attorney General, somebody at Justice, you have to assume if he meant interfere with an FBI investigation, whomever is trying to call him off, that would be a big deal, right? That would be a big deal. It would also have given him the occasion on May 3rd to say, but let me tell you something. I took notes in a meeting I had with Donald Trump, and Donald Trump was trying to call me off the investigation of Michael Flynn. That would be the time to say it, right? You know, I can't tell you about the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General, that's never happened, but let me tell you about this case where Donald Trump tried to interfere with an investigation here. Let me tell you about that one. I even have notes to prove it. He didn't do that. Well, why didn't he do that? Why didn't he do that? Well, we know why he didn't do it, ladies and gentlemen, because he didn't think he was actually being ordered to be called off an investigation. He didn't really feel threatened by it and so forth and so on. That's why. So the people who are parsing, they need to think this through. That would have been the occasion for Mr. Comey to say, no. That's not been my experience. However, let me tell you one experience I had, and it's very troubling to me. I met with the President of the United States, and he said to me, I'm hoping you can see your way past this Flynn investigation. He's a good guy. And I immediately considered that an effort to tell me to stop investigating. I viewed that as a threat. Very improper. It's never happened to me before. Might even be obstruction of justice. So I immediately went to my superior, and I told my superior about this. No, none of that happened. And Comey was fired 6 days later on May 9th. Fired on May 9th. Now all of a sudden the memo. The memo doesn't appear. Somebody reads from the memo. Reads from the memo to somebody at the New York Times. Now, let me, as I work this through with you, that's why it's important to listen to the whole show. The reason they haven't leaked the entire memo to the New York Times, ladies and gentlemen, is because I believe that New York Times, that memo includes classified or investigative information. I could be dead wrong about it. Otherwise, why not leak it? Why read from it? How many copies of this memo are out there, ladies and gentlemen, that there are people reading from it to the New York Times? Beyond the original, did Mr. Comey make more than one copy? Did he make a copy? Did he take it home? Where are these copies of this memo? Where's the original? Inquiring minds want to know. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.